Hi guys, Taylor Cocke here for Yahoo Esports. I'm here with Scott Mercer, a member of the Overwatch team. We're going to talk about a little bit of the Overwatch competitive meta, but first, I want to talk about Sombra, just because obviously she was announced today. It's something of a big deal, and we got a chance to look at some of her abilities a little bit earlier. I went over to the press room and played a little bit of her. Where do you guys see her in the competitive meta right now, especially with the likes of Tracer and Genji being some sort of the more elite harassers at the moment?
Sure. I mean, I definitely think she is that infiltrating, harassing character, kind of like Tracer in the sense that like she can get around to places where you don't expect her. You know, just like Tracer can do with like her blinks. Definitely like, you know, hit the back line, hit the supports. She has a lot of escapability, so I mean that's definitely a big thing. So she's kind of going to be that. I think she's going to end up being kind of that persistent, like, you know, pest. So it's just some of the enemy teams. Well, I mean, we'll have to see. Like, you know, does she end up like being like better or worse than like Tracer? We'll have to see. I mean, like her ultimate's really good in terms of like initiating team fights because, you know, not only does she like drop barriers completely, so it's like, you know, by Reinhardt, you know, by Reinhardt barrier. You know, a lot of shields just like drop down, so like Zarya is really affected by it. But also like just everyone's hacked, so it's like 6 seconds of not using any abilities. Like you start a team fight where the enemy team is, you know, basically arms tied behind their back and they're just fighting with their weapons. That's a pretty big advantage.
It affects counterplay in a lot of different ways. That is really interesting. There are very few ults in the game that are capable of completely shutting an entire team down like that. I mean, Lucio's ult comes to mind as one that can sort of shut down an entire engage or disengage or whatever. Whatever
at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, do you think that this is an ability that? What is this thing's gonna its place gonna be within the competitive meta? It seems really strong.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things we'll have. I mean, we'll definitely have to see. I mean, since she does have such a high skill ceiling, I think there's so many possibilities with her in terms of exactly what she can do and like the right circumstances. I think we won't see her necessarily making a huge initial impact. I mean, maybe we will, but like I think over time, as like teams and players like, you know, really start to understand what she can bring to the table. We'll start to see some really like amazing things with her.
Are you guys happy with the idea that there are characters that are very niche? I mean, like there are certain characters in the game, like Tracer, for example, that is almost always going to be viable if you have a really high level Tracer or a high level Genji. Are you guys happy that the characters like Symmetra or Torbjorn, these guys are very specialized? Is that something that you are cool with? Is that something that you're happy with being, or just saying like, oh, this is in this very specific situation you choose this character?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we definitely have to be very careful of. Like, one of the things when we talk about, like, those characters is that, well, we're not just balancing strictly for the competitive scene. Like, we have to be careful that, like, if a character like Torbjorn and Symmetra becomes really oppressive and, you know, at the competitive scene, oh, they're going to be horrible. They'll do horrible things to our, like, you know, lower skilled players. You know, and we have to, you know, we definitely have to, like, look out for them. So we have to be careful of that. So, I mean, I think there are, like, we're totally fine with necessarily like Torbjorn not being in every single composition and so forth, you know, so forth. And yeah, but we're learning a lot. I mean, definitely, I think that one of the exciting things about like for us as developers is like now that we're seeing like so much more competitive Overwatch being played at these super high levels, seeing how the meta is developing, and we're just trying to like make healthy adjustments as we can.
So talking about some of the nerfs that have already, or buffs or whatever, have come, some of the changes that have come through for heroes, can you point to any that were specifically sort of perhaps influenced by the professional scene? Something that you saw on the highest levels that made you go, oh, we may have to change that.
Yeah, I mean, we like made a change to Genji with the way his double jump works, where previously he basically double jumped whenever he didn't have to never hit the ground, which I think definitely that's the kind of thing that like only like the really like super like high end like player can pull that off. But like it's, if you can do that, it's pretty frustrating to like try to fight a Genji that's constantly like up on, you know, on buildings and so forth. So that was something that we saw that definitely we said, okay, that's probably too much. I mean, and Genji is plenty strong right now. Amazing ultimate and amazing character. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. Are there like ways that, you know, it's not just about like the power of the character in itself, it's also about like, well, how good does it feel to play against that character? And that's something we always have to be careful of.
A big debate that is happening in esports pretty much across the board is the idea of the frequency of patch changes. The League of Legends famously has a patch every 2 weeks, whereas Dota has a patch every couple months. Right. Have you guys? Is there any thoughts on sort of solidifying when patch changes are happening for you guys, or are you sort of just taking a look at when it's needed?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things we've talked about is like we're working on these like a respectable number of changes, like the ult, cost change and all these other changes. And we thought that was a really great time to do it right now because the competitive season 3 is starting, like in early December. So we're trying to line up the more major patches with the bigger changes to try to like hit around the beginning of the competitive season, so we don't drop some huge bomb like in the middle of it. I mean, I'm sure there are going to be like cases where it's like, oh, we need to act now, something come up, and again, we'll try to like limit that as possible, but. So we are definitely mindful of like those kinds of issues, and that's something we're trying to do as best as we can.
So as more and more characters are coming out, Sombra is starting to come out. There's talk of here and there of perhaps adding bans to the game, saying no more heroes. That's obviously from the community side of things. Sure. Is this something you guys have ever looked at? Is this something you guys are looking at now, or do you have sort of really no interest in that, just letting the meta play out as it is?
It's something we've talked about. I mean, certainly because again, it is something that the community brings up, and we have to like go through. Okay, well. Is it the right thing like for Overwatch? And I think for us, it's not something we're really looking at right now. I mean, we really like the fact that you can change heroes like during the map. You can like there's something especially like I think there's something really cool knowing it's like, hey, I mean especially like at the professional like competitive scene where it's like, hey, there's this amazing Genji player. It's like say like Shadowburn. Like Shadowburn's an amazing Genji player. It'd be a real shame if like you could never see that because like that was kind of banned. So we really like the idea of like, hey, let's see the best players playing their like best heroes, like really pushing things to the limit. So that's for us at least. It's like we don't. Like I said, we're not really looking at that right now. We want to see like we hope we don't need to ever like resort to that kind of like ban system.
So finally. Are you guys happy with the competitive meta right now? Are you happy with the 2-2-2 thing? You happy with the tanks, or is it something that you guys will ever be satisfied in?
I mean, it's something like it's in some respects it's like not up to us. Yeah. Strangely as that is, I mean, I think it's actually the meta's been like changing at a pretty like healthy rate. I mean, there's a lot of people that thought coming into the OGN like Apex like league that like that Reinhardt's now boosted but going to be the thing, and then it changed to Reapers being the thing, and then it's like, oh, well, we can counter that. Now it's Genji's. There was some like thought that's like, oh, like 3 tanks is going to be the thing. It was for a little while, and now it is some cases more 2-2. But like, again, like opening week, we did see some teams even bring out like 4 tanks. Mm-hmm. So I think there's still a lot undecided out there, and I think we just need to get like more games played, seeing what really works, and that's so. It's like pretty undecided at this point, and I think that's healthy. We'll let the game develop in a very natural way, and just make changes when we like feel like we really need to. When it goes off the rails. Mm-hmm. But so far, so good.
Well, I would hope that changes were made if things got a little too nuts.
Absolutely.
All right, Scott, thank you so much for talking to us today. For everyone else, this is Taylor Cocke at Yahoo Esports.